Hello, in this tutorial we're going to kind of be discussing the ways in which you can analyze stuff on Praat, at least according to your assignment. So, to start off, let's actually open Praat so you can follow along with this tutorial. So, in order to open the actual audio file that you want to analyze, you're going to go over here to Open, Read from File, and you're going to look for the specific file that you want to analyze. It should be a WAV file or some sort of audio file that can be run by this system. And just open that. And now you've got your audio file. In order to create a text grid, you're going to want to go over to this side table, go down here to annotate, to TextGrid, and this is the first like weird-ish thing that shows up on the worksheet. You're going to want to, these are the tiers. You're only going to need one for this assignment, and we are going to be calling it segments. I'm pretty sure it's segments. I'm pretty sure it's plural. If it's singular, just put segment. The name doesn't really matter. It only matters for the purposes of this assignment. Also, you are not going to need a point here, so you can just get rid of that and apply. And yeah, so you try pressing OK, and it gives you this warning message. Don't worry, you can just X out of it here, and it'll be good. You'll be good. So yeah, so now we have our text grid, we have our audio file. You want to make sure you open the two same files, right? In the case that you have all of your three audio files open at the same time, you want to make sure that the text grid you are opening matches the actual audio file that it comes from. So in this case, we're good. I only have one audio file. I only have one text grid. But again, if you had multiple audio files and multiple text grids, you want to make sure that they line up so that it is synchronized, because ultimately what you're doing when you are working in the text grid, like we'll do in a bit, these are synchronized processes. If you save one, it saves onto, it doesn't necessarily save onto the other, but the text grid's data is contingent on its interactivity with the audio file that you had. So, enough talking. We can get into the fun part. So, select both of these at the same time. The side table will change, and you are going to press View and Edit. And voila. You've got your audio files. In my case, I recorded the vowel consonant syllable over on this side, and I've got the vowel consonant syllable on the other side. Let me just play them out for you. And there we go. So now comes the fun part, right? Like what we've been building up to. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is, oh, sorry. You're probably seeing something closer to, that was the wrong button. I'm sorry. You are probably seeing something closer to this. Right, just a blank spectrogram with a blank waveform. I strongly encourage you to go up here to Formants, Show Formants, so that you generate these dots. These dots are going to help you better see the vowel activity that's going on in our syllables. If you look closely here, what I'm doing here, by the way, is I am clicking and dragging a section to highlight the part that I want to analyze. I'm then going down here to cell, and this brings up the specific highlighted section that I had. If I press this back key, it'll bring me back to the last view that I had. And this cell button is different from this in button. This in button just does a generic zoom in, and it doesn't focus on anything specific other than the middle. Same thing with this out button. If I wanted to press to focus in on this selected area, I press this cell button. This back button, as we previously saw, takes us back to the last screen we saw. And this all button takes us back to everything, which conveniently is also the last screen we saw. Anyway, all that aside, going into our actual analysis, we can highlight this area, press cell, and yeah, talking back to the formant dots, going back to the formant dots, we can kind of see that they are moving differently before this point, right? They're kind of a little more random. We can see some squiggly action going on over here, whereas here, I'm kind of cherry picking here, but it's to show that we have some more uniformity in our lines. We have some more consistency in the ways which these dots kind of reflect the shading in the backgrounds. Let me take this off so we can see the shading. And yeah, this shading is going to be our best indicator for where a vowel is. These are pretty characteristic of vowels. When you get further on in this course, they will kind of reflect what vowel you are looking at if you are just looking at a blank spectrogram. But for now, you don't really have to worry about that. It's just something to kind of keep in the back of your mind. And for now, we can just look at this. We can appreciate. We can kind of, if we wanted to identify the vowel, we could just play the audio file and identify it by ear, as opposed to just visually. But yeah, I'll quit blabbering about all that extra stuff and focus back on the topic of this video, which is the assignment. Right. Okay, so as we previously stated, this consistency kind of leads us to believe that we have a vowel here, which if we listen to the audio is correct. If we listen to this part of the audio, we can hear the more consonantal. Would that be the way to say it? That's a good question. We can hear the consonant over on this side and the vowel over on this side, which kind of tells us that we've got a good boundary going on. We were able to visually identify a good boundary here through the use of these formant dots. And we can press enter, and it adds the one boundary right there for us. If you wanted to do this based off of the waveform as opposed to through the spectrogram, what you can do is I'm going to zoom in here so to see this interaction better. What you can do is you can observe this repetition. You can observe this repetition, and that is going to be characteristic of vowel sounds. That repetition, as opposed to this more random pattern, is a sign that a sound is more cyclical in its nature. I don't know if that's necessarily the right terminology, but it does convey the meaning that I want it to convey, in that we can see these forms, these structures, repeating. Oh, actually, that's fun. This is our structure, and it repeats over here, I think. No, this is a weird one. Oh, that's fun. This is why you should take it more from the middle as opposed to the front. In the middle, you are going to have a stronger vocalic presence, as opposed to either at the beginning or the end, right? It's more, you could say developed. They're in the middle. So let's do that, right? Oh, actually, before we get into that, this shading back here, there are no necessarily formant dots going on here, but there is still some energy going. There is still some energy, right? It could, if we focus on that, we could say, we could determine whether it's just background noise, whether it's just background noise, or it is actually part of the vowel. So let's find out. It doesn't really sound like anything, but it could also just be a very short data point. I am going to use my own discretion. You may have a different judgment, and that would be perfectly okay. But I'm going to use my own discretion to say that the vowel ends here, because ultimately this formant presence is what we want to use, is what we kind of use to indicate where vowel activity is happening. As for the consonant, right, it's kind of weird. There isn't really a pattern to it. But what we can see is that there definitely is some activity, especially according up here to the waveform. So we can say this one, we're not, since this is a consonant, not a vowel, we will want to more so focus on what's actually happening as opposed to what Praat is suggesting is happening. So we can select this spot and we can say that our consonant starts here. You don't need to get this perfect. As long as you get something in the ballpark that looks correct enough, you will be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and press enter to establish that boundary. We're going to go back to our previous screen and we have our boundaries established. Yay! Okay, so now we can select the actual area, enter our thing, her phonetic value, or IPA character, I mean. This one, I'm too lazy to actually get an IPA transcription going, so I'm just going to press that, even though it's something closer to the A vowel, as it appears in like cat, can, other words. Yeah, this is just a placeholder for my own sanity. And so with going back to the actual homework that I keep getting distracted from, the very first thing you're going to want to do is establish your sequences, right? That's the first thing you want to do. You could do it for all of your data points right away, and then do your calculations after. Or you could break down your data as you go. You could either break down your data as you go, or you could break down your data and do the calculations. Break down more data, do your calculations, and so on. It's more so a matter of your own preference, how you prefer to work. But regardless of whatever that process looks like, I encourage you to establish your sequences before doing any kind of calculation on any of your data points. That's a good way to put it. So now we're going to actually go back to what we were talking about earlier and talk about our periodicity. So we're going to highlight some of that middle section. You can use your own discretion to decide which of these kind of structures you want to focus on. I typically want to focus on 3 repetitions and get the middle one. Just my own preference. You can work however you see fit. But yeah, if you go for the 3 repetitions, you get to kind of see the relationships that they have to each other and kind of choose from there. As you can see, I have some pretty gnarly vowels. I'm not sure I understand what I am seeing from my own vowels. They seem very weird. But regardless of that, there is some consistency to what we are seeing, right? You can kind of see how, if you wanted to, you could see how we start here. A period goes up to here. And then that something similar to this structure repeats over here, right? That is a... Oh, no, okay, I kind of see it now, never mind. Still, though, okay. I'm getting distracted. I keep getting distracted. I sincerely apologize. But these are the kinds of things you will hopefully be able to comment on towards the end of the class. The way each individual period appears isn't necessarily important as long as it is something that can be observed, as long as it's something that you can say does repeat and does contribute to the constituency of a vowel. Anyway, here's our period. We have the length of that period in this topmost time, value, thing. And yeah, if you will remember, our equation for frequency is just an inversion of the amount of time that this period lasts in seconds. So you could multiply. Wait. No, I'm going crazy. I apologize. I was thinking ahead. So what we can do is we can open our calculator. Do I have a calculator on here? Oh, it's on Bing. That's a bummer. Oh. So we have our calculator, and we can input 1 divided by 0.00765 8. And bada bing bada boom, we've got our fundamental frequency, because remember, that is what we are calculating, not just a generic frequency. We are looking for our fundamental frequency, our F0, if you will. With this number, we can put that number into our table and be done with that for now, until we go through the rest of the data and then go through into the individual questions and stuff. But yeah, that's basically what you're going to be doing for the first part. You're gonna break all of your data points into segments, as we did here, and you are going to then calculate the fundamental frequency of each of the vowels. Now on to the next thing. There we go. Now we've got a vowel consonant syllable, a CV syllable. And what we are wanting to do is basically the same-ish thing, where we establish where our vowels are. Right? So we can see that there is some movement over here. Let's go in depth. Let's be annoying about it. We can see some movement happening over here. And we know, well, I didn't show you, but there is a knowledge that the first sound that appears here is going to be a vowel. So we can assume that the movement going on here contributes to that vowel. Let me show you the audio now. Okay, so verified that we are working with a vowel as the first sound, and we can kind of see how it tapers off over here. There's like this weird kind of disconnect where some of the formant dots start dangling up here. We get this one disappearing. We get some weird effects with the shading down here. And that kind of reflects the lack of vocalic tonality that's going on with the recorded utterance. So we can do is we can kind of dive in here and kind of see what's going on. We can see how it's kind of breaking up over here. You can see how it's getting really wonky over here. And yeah, I'm just going to kind of bookmark this section for now. We're going to zoom back in and see how that where that kind of lines up with everything. And sure enough, if you look closely here, you can see how it's a lot less rigid in the way that the squiggly things are lined up, right? It's a lot more jagged, a lot less organized, which is indicative of some sort of lack of vocality, if you want to word it like that. And yeah, since here we are actually working with a consonant again, we can kind of see that that lack of energy here is indicative of the tapering of sound. So I'm going to put a border here. I'm going to kind of double check here. And you can hear that like very subtle stoppage. I have very weird stops, so yours will hopefully be easier to analyze than this. But you can hear that stopping, that burst, I mean. Here you should be able to hear the vowel, if I did this right. Yeah, you can kind of start hearing some of that closure. But for the most part, you're getting the vocalic sound. And again, this one is more so a reflection of my weird pronunciation of stuff. So I do apologize for that. But that's the general gist of what you're going to be doing here in terms of the boundary placement. Now for the actual thing you will be putting into the table, you're going to focus on this vowel, right? So here you've got the length of the vowel. And the table should be asking you what that length is in milliseconds. So what you're going to be doing here is you're going to be multiplying this value by 1,000 to go from seconds to milliseconds. What another way to think about it, as was pointed out, right? You could just move this decimal point 3 places over, so you get a value of 211 milliseconds. 211.15 milliseconds if you want to be more annoying about it. Not annoying, but if you want to be as precise as you can be. Or annoying. I didn't say that. Okay. Anyway, we have that figured out, right? That's what you're going to be doing for part 2, along with the little questions that you have there. And for question 3, for table 3, you're going to be going back to your first recording. In that first recording, instead of looking at the vowel, you're going to be looking at voice onset time. So in order to do that, you're going to be focusing on your consonant instead of your vowels. And you're going to basically be doing, one way you can think about this is you are going to be doing what you did in task 2, where you are recording the milliseconds of the first sound, with the audio sample for part 1, right, you were, instead of the first sound being a vowel, your first sound is going to be a consonant, and you're recording that voice onset time, which is the time from the burst to the time that a vowel is fully realized. Which, if you did this right, should be the area that you highlighted. In my case, the vowel is going to be, the consonant is going to have a voice onset time of 65 milliseconds. And yeah, aside from that, that basically covers all the stuff you're going to be doing, like actually be doing on Praat. And on top of that, you've got some questions to get through, and you should be good. I know this tutorial was very long. There were a lot of distractions that came up on my end. For that, I do sincerely apologize. But I do hope it was helpful. And yeah. You have a nice day, I guess.